thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Friday, November 8th. And today is STEM or STEAM Day. We'll bring that back down a little bit. It's also National Parents as Teachers Day, you guys. National Harvey Wallbanger Day.
Imagine going through high school with the nice name Wallbanger.
Yeah.
Imagine going into a chat room with the last name Wallbanger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a pseudonym.
Yeah.
All right.
Or even a massage parlor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's also National Cappuccino Day, you guys.
Pinkies up, bitches.
Pinkies up, you know what it is. Yes, that's right. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So thank you to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And that's right, kicking it off today. That's right, we have the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte, the Quasimodo caretaker, the baby daddy to little baby Zozo. And that's right, he is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Oh, yeah, Jason. What is happening, man? What's happening to everybody this Friday? And guess what? The sun came up again this morning.
Yeah, it did. It was a little bit brighter today.
Quit y'all's crying. Quit y'all's crying. We are in the reaping.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. This is crazy. Anyways, now the election is come and gone. It is time for the nation to heal. And what better way to make amends with the loved ones that you are convinced sent America back in time a good 50, 60 years than sitting for a warm traditional holiday meal with them, symbolic of the Native American genocide that kicked this whole damn country off in the first place.
Wow.
Got to get those factual jabs in before history completely is whitewashed, right? MSG, am I right? Am I right?
Stop the cap.
Yeah. No matter who's in office or what policies are on top of mind, Thanksgiving weekend in America sparks a yearly spike in mainstream American retail sales, known to make or break the best of the best companies. Most notably with Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, annually the best day possible to catch live streams and replays of Walmart greeters getting stomped out in 4K. And cannabis retail, on the other hand, sees its yearly holiday spike one day before Thanksgiving on Green Wednesday. And the reason is kind of obvious. If you're like me, rather than trying to sway the political views of any of the so-called wise elders in my family, the first thing that I'm going to do every single holiday season is link up with the same cousins I've been taking the walk with for decades and putting something into the air on site. And according to Jane Technologies and Headset, cannabis retail sales data says that more of you are just like me at increasingly higher rates each year. Last year, 2023, Green Wednesday sales rose 90.5% compared to prior Wednesdays, with Thanksgiving week totaling $355.8 million in marijuana sales across tracked states. And according to cannabis data firm Headset, the top selling products were flower with 2 million units sold, which was 27.4% of the total, for $144.5 million, or 40.6% of the overall revenue. Vape pens were coming in second with 6 million units sold, 19% of total, and $85.5 million in total revenue, which is 24% of the grand total of sales for last year's Green Wednesday. And then finally, pre-rolls, 9 million units sold, 25.9% of the total, for $50.4 million in revenue, or 14.2% overall. So to capitalize on the rush, both firms recommend that retailers plan ahead, obviously, as they've been seeing they've already seen a 17.17 increase in wholesale orders this year over last year, early November. I would say a lot of that probably has to do with this year's election, but I don't know. We will see. Preparing inventory in advance for these high demand periods can help retailers maximize their revenue. And it also makes sure that you guys are not overbuying or oversupplying products that your customers do not want. Obviously, this year will be very, very tenuous at best when you're running into those loved ones, those family members that you see every single year, if you do partake in Indian Genocide Day. But
whoa,
hey, it is what it is. Yeah, wrap my ass with a small pox blanket every single year. Ain't that right, Jason?
Oh boy.
And no, seriously though, man, interesting sales data. It looks like it's going to spike even higher this year, and hopefully these cannabis retailers take full advantage of that. The numbers are going up, even though we don't have more states that are opening up this year. Expect to see historic numbers across the board. If you are a retailer, what are you doing to prepare? And if you are just a consumer, what are you guys smoking this holiday season? I'm Rico Lamitte, dope as that on the street for High at Night News. What are you putting in there, Jason? Is it anything less than the greatest weed?
No, it's only the best weed in the world. Just so you know, Rico, that's it.
And big ups that pack that me and Stu smoked on yesterday, man. Ooh.
Oh yeah, See, that was some of the best weed in the world, right there, Rico.
That was fantastic. Appreciate that.
Yes, good. I'm glad you guys enjoyed. I hope Stu's doing well.
I don't think he's woken up yet.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Oh boy.
That's funny. That's funny. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that people are anticipating such a Green Friday, or whatever they want to call it, is due to the fact that there's a lot of optimism in the fact that the economy is going to be getting better in the near future.
I think that it's a testament to the fact that we know we're all going to be fighting with our family members, because a lot of us didn't vote the same, and we're going to need to be high for that, Jason.
That's a good one too. I'm not mad at that either. Could
you imagine if your sisters were not Trump supporters and you had to sit there with them all meal? Like, they're arguing over the potatoes. Like, bitch, I just wanted the potatoes and the gravy.
Well, in all fairness, I can't eat the potatoes, so I wouldn't be arguing with them about the potatoes.
I can eat the potatoes. I'm eating the potatoes.
Mm-hmm. See, Jenny Beth, I'm right with you. This is why I take that walk every single year. Me and my cousins get together. We smoke 3-4 joints, a couple of blunts together, and walk up in there. And we can't hear none of that shit.
Yep.
In fact, you know what? Last year, as always, I made like a very nice Friendsgiving, very well-appointed table. And Jason Beck came and started an argument at my damn kitchen table.
I just started speaking truth, okay? I just started speaking truth. I did not start any argument. I just spit out some facts, and then people just couldn't handle them.
Jason showed up late, and he started an argument.
First of all, I was not late. I was on my time, Jenny Beth. And I brought stuff that you actually needed. As a matter of fact, that you were like, hey, we need this X, Y, and Z. We can't do this without it. Da 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 da. Which I brought and came and saved the day.
Some extra paper plates.
And I came and saved the day. As I remember.
He was obviously living up to the moniker, the highest Republican in the room.
That's right.
He came in there on fire like the highest Republican in the room.
You already know, Rico. You already know what time it is.
I would highly recommend anybody in anticipation of that, if you're going to be inviting friends over, just put a sign above the door like, we are not talking politics. Like anybody that starts some kind of political banter of any kind, get the fuck out.
I mean, I didn't even bring up any politics. I just, you know what I'm saying, dropped some little one-liners, and you know what I'm saying, some people took offense to it, and I thought it was funny.
You brought up Israel.
Got triggered.
You brought up Israel.
I was not the one that brought up Israel. No, that is not true.
Jewish people at my table.
I was not the one that brought up Israel. That's cute.
Anyway, Dr. T, Dr. Mark, what are your thoughts? What do you guys have Thanksgiving traditions, if you even adhere to the annual shit show that is Thanksgiving? Excuse me.
Well, you know, you've got to give thanks for being alive after the slaughter and massacre of many of people, particularly people of my background. So, you know, trying to bring love in a time where there was a lot of hate is really what I see it all about. And absolutely, cannabis is what brings that love to the table for Thanksgiving. Also brings a good appetite. So, definitely encourage folks to partake as part of the ritual of getting folks together and being together despite differences in opinions. Actually, we're not that far off. I don't know why people divide Republicans and Democrats. There's such a slight difference between them. I mean, let's get real. Give me a good radical like Cornel West, and then we'll talk differences. But,
that would be lit.
The Cornel West side with another vote.
I would definitely come over for that, Dr. T. That's for sure. I would definitely come over for that.
We'll invite him for Thanksgiving and have an awesome conversation.
We'll have Cornel West, and I'll bring you bring Cornel West, and I'll bring Victor Davis Hanson, and we'll have an amazing conversation.
You let Cornel know that he had my vote this year.
That's funny, you guys. That is funny. You know what's funny that Jenny Beth, you say that because my little sister, she is a lefty.
I know.
And so I do troll her
Shout
all
out
the
to
time.
Sandra.
Yeah, I do troll her all the time. It's fun.
Yeah.
Dr. Mark, what about you? Do you partake yearly in the yearly festivities up there in New England? Is there a fog of guilt that comes over all of New England each year?
Everyone who gathers in my place is pretty much politically aligned, so we don't need to talk politics. I would just say in general, I love Jason Beck.
Thank you.
And there's nothing that could make me not love him. The other thing I'll just say is that when life gets you down and when you're not feeling good about how things are going, remember that music makes everything better. And no matter what you're feeling, whether you're depressed or you're just unhappy or you're mad, music will immediately just change your attitude and change your behavior. So I'm just going to get lost in the music and just remember that there are, certain things that we all seek in this life, and that, you're not always going to agree with everybody. But one thing I think that we can all agree on is that we got to take care of each other. And I think part of the mission here at High at Nine News is to make sure that we get the truth out, and that people can't make mistruths and lies about cannabis. And so we have to make sure that we stay true to that mission. And I think as long as we're doing that, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, whether you voted for Harris, or whether you voted for Trump, you're going to get the straight poop here on the High at Nine.
Very, very well said, Dr. Mark. That was amazing.
Love you, Jason Beck.
Oh, I love you too, Dr. Mark. Much love to you and the whole Sheldon family out there in the great state of Vermont. You know, I have a lot of family out there.
And the Sheldon that's there in Los Angeles too.
Yes, and he's more than welcome to come and join me on during this holiday season as well if he would like to.
I'll tell him that, Jason. Thank you so much.
Most definitely. Matthew St. Germain, you have anything you want to follow up on Dr. Mark after that?
Yeah, I've. Number one, no matter who was going to win on Tuesday, it wasn't my candidate. and we're kind of fucked. It's a choice between getting fisted with or without lube. American people chose without lube, and I respect that. I've been falling back on the words of great men who I admire, such as, first off, Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. That is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant." I would finish that up with 2 quick quotes from Hunter S. Thompson. The American public got what it wanted on Election Day. They deserve what they get, and they deserve to get it good and hard. And lastly, in a nation ruled by swine, all pigs are upwardly mobile, and the rest of us are fated to watch.
That was a perfect quote. The second one was a perfect quote for Harvey Wallbanger Day, Matthew St. Germain.
Thank you.
And on that, we're going to go to a commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Oh, man, that was weird. Hey, you, America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
Oh. Well, you guys. And we're back, Rico.
We're back like we left something, and y'all know who it is. I don't know if he is Jewish, if he's not Jewish. There seems to be rumors going around that Jason Beck is. I don't know what's going on here, but l'chaim, Jason.
Heavy on the ish.
Yeah.
Hope you get your yarmulkes ready, because it is Friday, and then the highest Republican in every room is here to break us off with a little end of the week heat. None other than the high at 9 News head honcho, the highest Republican in every room, the longest continuously operating retailer in the damn world. It is Jason.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're out there on the East Coast. I did miss one thing on today. Today is also happy birthday to the Marine Corps today. We do want to wish you guys a big old hoo-ha today. And
it's Sunday on the 10th, and it's hoorah, not hoo-ha.
Thank you.
Hoo-ha is what Saman takes care of.
Thank you.
And woo-ha is
it's on Sunday. It makes sense why it wasn't on my calendar today. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. So happy birthday, Marines, on Sunday. We won't be doing a show on Sunday, but we do want to wish you a happy birthday. And the Call Memo just sent in a super chat that says, my quote for today, smoke 'em if you got 'em. So thank you for the love, Call Memo. We super, super appreciate all of your support, my man. And but nonetheless, I'm going to get into my story. You ready, Adam? All right. Because, oh man, you guys, over 500,000 Miami-Dade voters opposed adult use marijuana. And everyone's asking what happened. Well, Miami-Dade may have a reputation as a party destination, but across the country on Tuesday, a majority of voters rejected allowing adult use marijuana to become part of the attraction. While almost 56% of Florida voters supported Amendment 3, only 49% of Miami-Dade voters were in favor of the proposal to legalize the sale of marijuana over the counter, making the state's most populous region one of the most conservative on cannabis, you guys. Miami-Dade was just one of 3 counties where the number of votes cast on Amendment 3 topped 100,000 and support fell below 50%. Only Collier County and Sumter counties joined Miami-Dade on that list. The amendment, which failed, needed 60% of the vote in order to pass in the first place, due to the fact that it was going to be a constitutional amendment. And officials and pollsters have differing opinions on why Miami-Dade County rejected Amendment 3. Republicans and Hispanic voters were against it. A state-sponsored campaign against it was effective, and voters didn't want to smell weed, or a medical marijuana market made it unnecessary. Interesting factors they're trying to say. A Miami Herald analysis of results from each of Miami-Dade's 757 voter precincts shows that Hispanic majority neighborhoods overwhelmingly voted against legalizing adult use marijuana, and most voters in each of the county's majority black neighborhoods meanwhile supported Amendment 3, as was the case in 38 of the county's 45 majority white neighborhoods. In a quote, they say, "What I think you saw is the same way that President Trump won independents, which are primarily Hispanics down here in Miami-Dade. Those folks were not necessarily in favor of marijuana," said County Commissioner Kevin Marino Cabrera. In a quote says, I just think it doesn't jive with our values and with our beliefs, they say, end quote. Not even Donald Trump's support for Amendment 3 swayed voters in cities like Hialeah, where 75% of voters cast a ballot for the former president and only 35% voted for adult use marijuana. And similarly, in Hialeah Gardens, only 34% of voters supported Amendment 3, and in nearby Miami Lakes, the number was only slightly higher at 40%. Hialeah Mayor Esteban, a.k.a. Steve Bravo Jr., thinks the city's opposition to adult use marijuana is simple. They and most other Floridians were worried about how it would affect their lives. In a quote, they say, "Whether you're Hispanic, whether you're black, whether you're white, there's one common thing amongst all of us. You want quality of life. You want your kids out of harm's way," he said, "and I don't know how legalizing marijuana somehow or another provides a better situation for families." End quote on that. I think they need to reevaluate that a little bit, but nonetheless, that's just my opinion. And if it had passed, Amendment 3 would have legalized adult use marijuana for individuals 21 and over, and the campaign for Amendment 3, led by Smart and Safe Florida, was backed by over $140 million in donations from Trulieve, the largest medical marijuana company in the state, you guys. And on the other hand, meanwhile, Meatball Ron and the DeSantis administration used millions of taxpayer dollars to run advertising campaigns against the amendment and aligned with the hemp industry to defeat the measure. In ads, websites, and press conferences, the administration argued that it would alter the quality of life, solely benefit corporations, and make Florida more liberal. Interesting. Part of that debate between the two sides fixated on the text of the amendment were things such as how much control it gave corporations, how it would be regulated, and what would be its impact. In West Miami, where only 45% of voters supported Amendment 3, Mayor Eric Diaz Pardon said he thinks flaws in the text made for a compelling reason to vote against it. I think I would totally agree with that assessment, but and he believes the opposition would have been higher if DeSantis administration had spent more and more people had known what was in the actual text of the actual bill. And in a quote, they're saying, "I think some people took their cue from the governor and lieutenant governor on this, which was the liability protection, just how far the amendment went. And that I think people were worried about," he said, referring to a line in the amendment that says the use of marijuana won't be subject to criminal or civil liability or sanctions. I would worry more about the fact that they couldn't sue any of the companies that put out these products, but nonetheless, sentiments toward marijuana in Miami-Dade County have softened in recent years, with county commissioners giving police the ability to write citations instead of making arrests for small-time possession. And nearly 5 years ago, State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle said her prosecutors would stop pursuing low-level possession cases altogether after the state legalized the use of hemp, which looks and smells like marijuana, you guys. Even so, though, Amendment 3 performed worse at the ballot box than the movement to expand access to abortion, though it also failed, and that proposal, Amendment 4, was more popular, gaining 58% of the votes in the county, and in neighboring Broward County, where Vice President Kamala Harris was favored, and Palm Beach County, where the two presidential candidates just about tied, adult use marijuana support was at about 60%. But there was a similar gap between support for the two amendments, you guys. It's fascinating. Nikki Fried, chairwoman of and for the Democratic Party in Florida and a former marijuana lobbyist, said the messaging against Amendment 3 was bolstered by an overall lack of motivation. In a quote, she says, "People are just not motivated to turn out for that issue," she said. Interesting position you want to take there, Nikki Fried. And Miami-based consultant Ben Pallara, who ran the 2016 medical marijuana campaign in Florida, said he came up against, in quotes, an instinctual cultural conservatism in Miami in 2016, but that he thinks state campaigns against Amendment 3 had a very large impact. He said the first medical marijuana campaign he ran back in 2014 was a losing effort and came up against a similar argument from officials about the text that medical marijuana is great, but not this bill. And a version of that messaging, he said, that this is for the corporations, affected the success of the overall amendment. In an additional quote, they say, marijuana is an issue that the county and the state has evolved on substantially over the last 10 years, he said. But the support that has grown for legalization is still, I think, relatively soft and subject to nuance. Miami Herald staff writer Douglas Hanks and that's pretty much it. Douglas Hanks and McClathy are the investigative reporters that worked on this, and thank you all for your work on that. That was super interesting. I agree with some of the assessments. Some of them I don't necessarily agree with, but I do believe that Amendment 3 was totally flawed within its writing, and that was probably its biggest downfall overall, because there were so many people from both sides of the fence, people that wanted to support it and people that would never support it in the first place, could poke holes through it. But nonetheless, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
The people of Florida have spoken. I think this protectionist bill did not go through. I think there were too many things added in there. I think that there was, we need to do a better job. And I hope that someone steps up and writes something that is meaningful legislation for Florida that they can get behind, that doesn't protect True Leave. It's not the True Leave cannabis bill.
Yep.
And I hope that they consider, patients' rights, because we look at other places, especially conservative places and conservative groups, and the changing factor on people's hearts and minds on cannabis has always been sick kids and cancer patients, right?
Yep.
So we need to have a bigger focus on getting patients what they need, and home grow access, I think, would be very helpful for them pushing this across the line.
I totally agree.
I really don't think home grow had that much sway on this. I think it's.
Are you serious?
I really think. Yeah, I feel like people were following.
Do you know how many people have yards in Florida?
I think. Let me finish, Jason. Can I do that?
I'm just asking a question. I'm just engaging with you, Rico. Just engaging.
Let me finish, and then we can engage. How about that?
Well, okay. Pause.
Yeah. All right,
Rico. It's time for straight white Americans, bro.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason. Yeah. I'm sorry he interrupted you.
I'm saying, in the grand scheme of things, I think it was more of just straight up Republican and their talking points. They're following Ron DeSantis. Yeah, they're following Ron DeSantis. They're following the Republican Party and the Hispanic vote.
I don't buy that.
Let me finish. The Hispanic vote is Republican, especially with the data coming out. The male Hispanic vote is Republican. That is their bellwether. That is their North Star now. And if you can't get the male Hispanic vote on board, chances are you're going to be going forward with whatever this Republican state and their governor is putting out there. Donald Trump.
Is it possible that fentanyl scare tactics weren't a good idea when you're trying to pass an adult use policy?
That could be another reason right there.
I think what we need to look at is the Hispanic population in Florida is largely Cubans. Cubans in Florida are mostly hardcore right-wing Cubans that were actually working with the CIA, the U.S. government, the Batista government, and the mafia, running the plantations and running the casinos. Those were the folks who fled when Castro took over because they were about to get it, or what they had been doing to the Cuban people, which was accumulating all their resources in their pockets. So when the right wing Cubans came, we have a nexus of first on right wing politics and economic policy, but also Roman Catholic brainwashing. We continue to see Latino voters, for the most part, voting against their interests because of brainwashing by the Roman Catholic Church that really started in the 1400s. A lot of this stuff is very easy to see if you just look at kind of look at it through a historical lens.
think we're forgetting about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, proverbial 800-pound gorilla. We've talked about this here at High at 9, and that is that the hemp industry is alive and well in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right? And the hemp industry has a bigger war chest than Kim Rivers and Trulieve. Let's face it, right?
That's
They're
true.
making more money. They have a much larger addressable market. They're not bogged down with over-onerous regulation. They have a quick route to market. There are tons of producers who are now producing the cannabinoid inputs, so you're 2 steps away from a field of hemp or a producer at a lab. So, I think that there are other things that basically kept this law from passing, and certainly eating into hemp, intoxicating hemp-derived cannabinoids market share was probably on the minds of those who have basically funded the hemp production that's huge in the state of Florida. Huge. With deep pockets behind it.
I think they lost because they didn't show Kim Rivers' kitchen table enough.
Oh, I see what you did there, Matthew St. Germain. That was cute. That's very cute. Very cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Ron DeSantis saying that he was going to put a huge blanket over the hemp industry and riding with them and pitting them against quote unquote marijuana. I think it really worked. Divide and conquer, and it worked.
Don't you think, Rico, that there was some influence based on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think I know there were all those leaked text messages and all that, getting the money over to these guys, like that never came up. And I think with Donald Trump becoming president again, we're just seeing like people at the highest levels of government. There's not going to be any accountability for shit like that.
Speaking of Donald Trump, I mean, he did take Miami-Dade County, and that was the first time that in a long time that county has voted red.
Yeah, but like I said, the government is for sale. Period.
Because we're red D for change.
Yeah, there's going to be no more accountability for shit that you get exposed for along the way. Ron DeSantis and this whole movement and all the money that went over to the hemp side of everything, and all these leaked texts showed that there was collusion with them, and they was pushing over all of these campaign funds when he shouldn't have been. Right? You think he's going to get exposed for that? You think he's going to get indicted, or he's going to get be held to account for that? Hell no.
Interesting. That was very cute, Jenny. I heard what you did there. That was cute.
And I saw your face when you realized it.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on this, Dr. T?
Oh, you're on mute, love.
You're still on mute.
Thanks, Jenny.
Oh, there we go.
I think this whole movement toward adult use, when are we going to realize that it's not working? The public doesn't want to hear that we want our weed and we want to get high. They want to hear that it's helping people. This is what we started with in California a long time ago, and somewhere along the line people got cocky and said the message needs to be we just want to smoke our weed, and it's not working. So let's get back to how we started this. And anyway, cannabis is a health and wellness product.
It is medicine.
Facts. And
you know what? I had a golf lesson yesterday, and I was sitting at the clubhouse working afterwards, and the bartender was talking to me, a really nice lady. And I'm like, can I smoke outside? And she goes, they even smoke pot out there. I'm like, I hope they keep doing it. That's my job. And she goes, that helps me. That's what gets me through life. She's like, my plant-based medicine. She's like, I call it plant medicine. I'm like, that is amazing. I was really stoked to hear that. So people are catching up.
I love it. And on that, we're going to roll right into Dr. Gene Talleyrand. He's the founder of Medican and the CESC. And at one point in time, he probably even wrote your parents' recommendation. That's right. It is none other than Dr. Gene Talleyrand.
Thanks. Happy Friday, everyone. So my story today is from Normal. This is a study. CBD oil mitigates neuropsychiatric symptoms in Alzheimer's patients. So for those of you who believe that the purpose of cannabis is to get high, consider that some people consume not to get high, but for other reasons. Approximately 6.9 million people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's disease. In this study, the daily consumption of plant-derived CBD oil relieved agitation, anxiety, depression, and other neuropsychiatric symptoms. According to data published in the Journal of Medical Cannabis and Cannabinoids, these symptoms were relieved among patients with Alzheimer's disease. The study was performed in Colombia, that's the country, where Chiron Life Science Corporation extracted oil from type 3 cannabis flowers, combined it with sesame oil at a concentration of 100 milligrams per milliliter of CBD and less than 2 milligrams per milliliter of THC. They also put a little sugar and flavoring in it. So 60 Alzheimer's patients who purchased the CBD-rich oil consented to this study. They were all over 65 and taking Alzheimer's medicines. They were not taking antipsychotic or benzodiazepines. They didn't have heart, liver, or kidney disease. Some had neuropsychiatric symptoms such as agitation, irritability, dysphoria, and aggression. Sometimes they experienced behavioral or appetite eating disturbances. They responded poorly to traditional medical treatments, and their caregivers also reported their own distress. So starting at a dose of 10 milligrams of CBD, the subjects consumed the oil 2 or 3 times per day after every meal for up to 2 years. They increased that dose until they noticed improvement. By the end of the study, 95% of the participants had achieved a 30% reduction in their neuropsychiatric symptoms. One patient dropped out because the CBD oil made him too sleepy. Some patients stopped early because they couldn't afford to keep paying for the oil. Otherwise, improvement in symptoms continued for as long as they were taking the oil. On average, patients were consuming 111 milligrams of CBD per day. Check your doses out there, guys. The authors concluded, to the best of our knowledge, this is the first study that evaluated the use of CBD as treatment for neuropsychiatric symptoms in Alzheimer's disease, with a sample greater than 50 patients and with a follow-up of more than 1 year. This study shows that treatment with CBD-rich oil is effective and safe in patients with neuropsychiatric symptoms secondary to Alzheimer's disease, independent of the severity of symptoms prior to the treatment. Further information derived from randomized controlled trials is needed to confirm the findings presented in this study. So the study has limitations. It's not randomized or blinded. Quite the opposite. The subjects knew exactly what they were taking. Thus, the placebo effect can't be ruled out. The placebo effect is usually estimated as about a third. Yet 95% of the respondents improved their scores by 30%. Even if it was a placebo effect, it's working great. Prescriptions alone were not getting it done. So how does it work? Could be that CBD is potentiating the effect of Alzheimer's drugs by blocking their metabolism. It may be that the small amount of THC is contributing. Whatever the molecular explanation, it works. This could not have been studied in the U.S. under the Controlled Substances Act. If cannabis is rescheduled, think how much more we might learn about treating people with cannabis. No, nobody got high in this study. Nobody even talked about weed. They didn't care. They were suffering and they just wanted to feel better. So will you support cannabis studies, or do you still just want to hoard your own stash? This is Dr. John Talleyrand with High at 9 News.
Full support.
Gracias.
Full. Yeah.
Make sure you don't give it to the universities. They're looking to find things bad out, and they're working for the pharmaceutical industry.
I actually did a story on this a few weeks ago. It was done by a university in the U.S., and they were showing positive indications as well in the reduction of agitation. So hopefully, we're going to start seeing some positive studies out of the U.S. It's going to be, 50-50.
Yeah. I got a call from someone actually yesterday from a doctor that received some funding to do some studies on with cancer therapies with cannabis out in New York. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I think there are going to be a lot more stories that come out like this, Dr. T, that are shedding a positive light on cannabis and showing its medical efficacies.
Efficacy.
Yeah,
I got
do you think it's the rescheduling that's doing it?
No, I don't. I think it's just, honestly, it's just the time, and the fact that there has been a lot of talk about funding for studies and research and whatnot, that now it's becoming such more of a talking point, and people are more open to the possibilities of that. I think it's just more just a shift in general public more than anything that has to do with Schedule 3.
Yes, but I also think that it could have something to do. I mean, like, let's be honest. Doctors shit their pants when they feel like they're going to get in trouble with the DEA, or when the pharma reps aren't going to come and, spiff them out anymore. And I think it has to do with maybe some of these physicians and some of these medical professionals are getting sick of their patients knowing more than they do, because I know that's never been a happy place for a physician to sit. But I think that this is definitely probably to get ahead a little bit of some of the pharmaceuticals.
I never knew that the DEA was a major sponsor of Depends.
Oh, man, Jason. All right. Next time you change yours, tuck the tag inside out and read it.
Well, now it's back in the office, we don't have to get rid of that agency, do we, Jason?
Wow, Rico.
Well, we're going to be getting rid of a lot of agencies because Elon's going to come in and be the Office of Accountability for the government. We're going to cut $2 trillion from the debt.
Who's going to wipe Trump's ass?
Ain't nobody worried about all that, Rico. You'd be.
He's got his application in, Rico. He's got an interview next week.
Being hella extra. Dr. Mark, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, it's a good lead into the story that I'm going to cover today, which is basically a general review on phytocannabinoids and their therapeutic potential. And I think if you go to the NIH reporter, so go to nih.gov and put in reporter, what you'll see if you put the keyword cannabinoid or cannabis in there is that, the U.S. government is indeed spending billions of dollars in research, and it's not all through National Institute of Drug Abuse, or NIDA, which again was sort of mostly funding work to show how detrimental cannabis is. Now the National Institutes of General Medicine, the national institutes that are dedicated to the central nervous system and musculoskeletal and orofacial all have R&D projects that are funded at large universities at places like Johns Hopkins and Scripps and Stanford and the major research universities. There are huge programs that are now being funded by the government to show, medical efficacy. So I think, it's been a tough, corner to turn, but I think we've turned that corner. And I think you'll see more and more projects like this. You'll get more and more research papers, more and more presentations of data in front of doctors. I'm on the organizing board for CanMed 2025 rather, which is going to be down in Puerto Rico, which is one of those conferences that really looks to engage doctors and the medical community to, illustrate people like Bonnie Goldstein, who are in Los Angeles, who has a huge track record of treating kids with tumor with cannabis. And you can't argue when you see the data in front of you that this child's tumor went from the size of a baseball down to a little raisin.
Yeah.
You can't argue efficacy like that. And yes, there will be scientific studies that basically show what I'll talk about in my story is some of the mechanisms by which these work. And a lot of drug companies are throwing efforts into this. And certainly, again, here at colleges like ours and universities across the land now, we're doing work that hopefully will convince Dr. T. Dr. T doesn't need any convincing, but Dr. T's colleagues that, hey, there's a patient in my office, I can prescribe them an FDA-approved drug with all those long list of side effects, or I could also prescribe them cannabis. And as long as we have the data in front of the doctors, they can now make their decision based on Hippocratic Oath, which they took to, pledge to reduce harm. And if cannabis is that medicine that can help reduce harm by reducing side effects or reducing other things and chemical dependencies and whatnot, In my view, and I'm sure Dr. T is totally aligned with me, it should not only be lawful, but it should be encouraged before taking these FDA-approved drugs.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to go into a commercial, and we're going to be right back.
This plan would make marijuana legal, but would not remove all of the consequences. Explain that for us.
Why are they busting in my door after midnight over something that Illinois says is legal?
Right. We've run into so much cannabis. We've run out of places to put it.
Things are legalized, but it's not legalized completely.
My mini doc on legalization policy in Illinois is available for free streaming now at colememo.com/minidoc.
All right, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show will be up on our website in just an hour or so after the show. And also, too, make sure that you please go and help out the Green Party. They are in need of some financial assistance to help pay their campaign debt and whatnot, and we want to help to do all of our parts to make sure to help them with that. See, the link is in the bio of this video. You can go to jillstein.com to make your contribution, as well as their whole cannabis policy is there if you want to read and check that out as well.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. You get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
And we're back.
Oh, yeah, everybody. This highly recognized New England-based organic chemistry expert always brings a little functional Friday heat when he is on the mic. So get your notepads ready for another studious sesh with the professor, Dr. Mark Shadone.
Thank you, Rico. Hello, everybody. It's Friday. It's got to be a good day, right? We got a weekend ahead of us. Hopefully you got some great plans for the weekend, and hopefully it involves cannabis. So like I was saying, the title of my story today comes from the International Journal of Molecular Sciences. It's a review by 6 scientists all over in Poland, where they do a pretty good job at doing research in this area, but it's entitled Cannabis-Based Phytocannabinoids, Overview and Mechanism of Action, Therapeutic Application, Production, and Affecting Environmental Factors. So those last two things, so you often see these kinds of reviews about the therapeutic uses of cannabinoids and their mechanism, and I'll go through that in a second. The cool thing about this paper that I thought was quite unique is they talk about production, so they talk about growing, and they talk about extracting, and they talk about environmental effects that affect basically what's found in the trichome of the plant. So this is kind of cool because, again, in Poland, certainly it's like many other Eastern European countries, they didn't really suffer from the cannabis prohibition that we've had here in the States, and they hadn't, totally given up on the notion that, hemp and cannabis have a number of different, uses, not only as medicines, but as materials. So I'll go through the abstract real quick, but then what I want to highlight is some of the things down in the paper. And so this paper is a review. It's a review that provides an overview of cannabis-based phytocannabinoids, focusing on their mechanism of action, therapeutic applications, production processes, along with environmental factors that affect their quality and efficacy. Phytocannabinoids such as delta-9 THC, CBD, CBG, CBN, and CBC exhibit significant therapeutic potential in treating various physical and mental health conditions, including chronic pain, epilepsy, neurodegenerative diseases, skin disorders, and anxiety. Cultivation of cannabis plants is a crucial role in determining cannabinoid profiles, with indoor cultivation offering more control, Jason, more control indoors. Isn't that good to you?
Mm-hmm. I love some indoors.
And consistency than outdoor methods. I think that's, maybe debatable, but okay, we can talk about it. Environmental factors such as light, water, temperature, humidity, and nutrient management, CO2, and drying methods are used as a key way to optimize cannabinoid content in the inflorescences. Inflorescences are basically just the cannabis flowers. This review outlines the need for broader data transfer between the health industry and technological production, especially in terms of what concentration and cannabinoid ratios are effective in treatment. Such data transfer would provide cultivators with information on what environmental parameters should be manipulated in order to obtain the required final product. So I'm going to scroll through the paper and just get down to the meat of the action, which is that THC has a number of biological targets in the human body. It's an agonist, which means it turns on the function of a very well-known receptor, the CB1 receptor, and that's the reason why there's a psychoactive and analgesic effect. It's also action at the CB1 receptor that is due to reduction in pain, so relieving muscle pain and spasticity. Increasing appetite is also a function of a CB1 agonism. Antiemetic effects, that's a reduction of nausea. Protecting neurons from glutamate-induced damage. This is all a function of delta-9 THC acting on CB1. When it acts on CB2, where it's a partial agonist, meaning that it's not as a full agonist as it is at CB1, it's responsible for reduction of inflammation because it basically turns off the mechanism by which pro-inflammatory cytokines are released in the body, and so that reduces inflammation. It also improves neurological function, again, by its action on CB2. One of the other targets that's recently been investigated is something called GPR55, where it's an agonist, and that's also responsible for reduction of inflammation and reducing neuropathic pain. When it binds to GPR18, it's an agonist, and that's responsible for analgesic effects, reduction of inflammation, and reduction of interocular pressure. That's what would be related to glaucoma. And antihypertensive effects, so it has a effect to basically lower blood pressure. So here's one that's near and dear to Matthew's heart, which is it acts on 5-HT3A. It acts as an antagonist here, and that's part of its interaction as an antimimetic. So that's the thing that controls nausea. It also acts on something called PPAR gamma, where it's an agonist, and that reduces or decreases blood glucose levels. So this is how it could basically help somebody who is diabetic. It acts as a vasorelaxant, so it opens up blood vessels, so it would affect blood pressure. It has anti-tumor effects, and it modulates intestinal permeability. So these are all happening because of THC binding to PPAR. There's also something called TRP channels. There's TRPV2 and TRPA1. Their delta-9 THC is an agonist, meaning it turns it on. And again, that's responsible for anti-inflammatory and analgesic activity, as well as action on TRP8 channel, where it's an antagonist and also responsible for analgesic activity. It lists a bunch of targets for CBD. CBD is very, very different in how it acts on the body than THC. And so there's a negative allosteric effect that CBD has at CB1. It's an agonist or an inverse agonist at CB2. And there, this is how CBD helps reduction of inflammation as well as pain and perception. Its inhibitor at PR 55, which is responsible for its limiting tissue industry and inflammatory response. So that might help with, again, wound healing properties. So I'm not going to go through the rest of them, but I just wanted to get down to the bottom here and just kind of go through some of the areas that basically these compounds act on. So we've already talked about pain management and reduction of inflammation. As we all know, cannabinoids are active in controlling seizures, especially difficult to treat seizures with most anti-seizure medications. What we find, again, is that CBD is very, very effective. And I'm sure Dr. T would agree with me that, you know, this has been long known before the approval of Epidiolex. Epidiolex is an FDA-approved drug where CBD is the active ingredient, but you don't need to get your doctor to prescribe that. You can just basically use a CBD tincture. So these compounds are active, again, in controlling neurodegenerative disease, in particular Alzheimer's, progression of Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. And also it's active, as we know, in multiple sclerosis. So there's a few different models that show that actually cannabis treatment can actually lower the amount of MS drugs that are currently being used and make them actually more effective. So there's a thing for us to think about, Dr. T, that you could use cannabis along with drugs and now use a lower dose of those drugs and maybe not have all the side effects. So I've already mentioned that it helps with reducing nausea. The other thing it does is it can actually stimulate appetite. It also improves sleep quality. It can be used to control anxiety, musculoskeletal regeneration. So when you're talking about maybe healing after, say, like a hip replacement, Dr. T, I'm just pulling this out of thin air, but I would assume that any musculoskeletal operation or medical procedure, that cannabinoids can actually help with the, because cannabinoids are known to recruit the cells that are in the body that both break down and build up bone. Those are called osteoclasts and osteoblasts. So those are all underpinned, again, by cannabinoid, endocannabinoid, and certainly phytocannabinoid stimulation. So I talked about neurodegenerative diseases. There's skin diseases, things like it's escaping me right now, but typical psoriasis, inflammatory skin conditions. There's a lot of autoimmune disorders where, again, the body's immune system is kind of on haywire, and cannabinoids basically reduce that back down to homeostasis. So yeah, I mean, to go back to Dr. T's story for a second, there is no plant like this on planet Earth that has active ingredients that can be used to treat so many different medical conditions. And I think what that teaches us about the endocannabinoid system is the endocannabinoid system is the body's own pharmaceutical company, right? And the way that the endocannabinoid system regulates the other systems, like the musculoskeletal system, like your nervous system, like your digestive system, like your central nervous system. This is the chemical communication system in the body. And it just so happens that that's what THC acts on. And through, Meshulam's pioneering work, we actually discovered the endocannabinoid system by trying to figure out how THC works in the human brain. So I think this research is, just fantastic. It's great to read these reviews, and you're sitting there in disbelief thinking that, why doesn't the medical community understand that this medication has been around forever? Humans have been using this for a variety of different indications, and we need to figure out how to incorporate this into people's wellness. And, that's what I have to say about this. I'd be interested in what my colleague, Dr. T, has to say, and interested in the rest of what the panel members have to say from Chure Science Hall here at St. Michael's College in beautiful Colchester, Vermont. That's my story today, folks. Have a great weekend, and I'd be interested in what everybody else has to say.
Dr. T?
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. I think it just brings up the scientific community needs a paradigm shift when it comes to cannabis. Cannabis is asking the scientific community for a paradigm shift, and we've known about these single agents causing or creating benefit for quite a while. What they are struggling with is that they're all in one plant and being administered at once and given to a person that may have multiple indications for using it, and improving the multiple indications. So in our research group, we call it the many-to-many problem. And problem is a good thing, not a bad thing, because it teaches us when we solve the problem. But how do we understand this many-to-many interaction, many active ingredients for many potential outcomes? And how do we predict the outcome when we're dealing with so many different targets? The traditional farm development world has trouble with this. They really prefer single agent, single outcome to understand it. And so we've got to bring them along as we learn from the plant.
Man, this is super
deep.
Yeah, very, 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 very deep. I mean, but it just proves what a lot of the anecdotal evidence that us as cannabis consumers have witnessed over the years. Right. This is like the in-depth scientific proof of what we have always alleged as far as anecdotal evidence. Am I right about that, doctors?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. But the part I didn't cover in this article, Jason, which is kind of cool, is so they talk about all these potential therapeutic applications, and in the back end, they talk about cannabinoids and indoor versus outdoor. They talk about potencies, but they also talk about environmental effects that can basically provide different ratios. And so it's kind of cool. I've never seen the medical connected with the cultivation like this. So if you just take this one standalone document, they're not doing original research here, folks. This is a review. But it's a review to basically bring these two areas of science together. You got the medical therapeutic side, and now you got the cultivation side. And maybe that's where we have to meet, right, Dr. T? It's kind of like if you wanted to grow some medicine that was good for, I don't know, Alzheimer's or good for controlling nausea, this might be a good article to look at and to say, okay, what is a good ratio? What are the scientific references? And, can you go back and, use this kind of methodology, again, convince doctors who are skeptical on, why would I prescribe cannabinoids when, like Dr. T says, I have this long history with FDA-approved drugs and it's a single drug. And, if I'm going to, say, lower my blood pressure, for example, so, what's your garden variety drug for that, Dr. T?
Lisinopril, 10 milligrams.
Yeah, so 10 milligrams lisinopril, or
amlodipine.
What about one of these cannabis ratios at the right ratio? Could you, justify basically saying, hey, maybe try a little bit of this tincture, or try, smoking some of this. The smoking thing has always got doctors all up in a tizzy because it's just not a healthy way to administer, but it's how humans have used cannabis for a while. But like when you have a patient in your office, Dr. T, and they're asking about using cannabis as a therapy, does the question of smoking come up, and how do you address that as a medical professional?
Well, I mean, with cannabis, it's not, I don't prescribe. I don't tell people what to do. I ask them what they're doing, and then we talk about where they want to go. And that's really more guidance than a prescription. So if they're smoking and they don't want to smoke, I can help them with that in terms of how to back off and how to substitute it for ingesting or topical products that will reduce the smoking. If they're smoking and it's benefiting them, and I have no evidence that the long-term use will be detrimental, then I, keep doing what you're doing. More power to you, and I'm glad that it's helping you out. And so There's still a lot of evidence. If they're using it for blood pressure, the question is, how's your blood pressure, right? Often you got to be careful because just smoking for blood pressure doesn't last long enough because your pressure might be high. On the other hand, if your pressure is due to a lot of stress and cannabis is reducing your stress and that's reducing your blood pressure, then great. It's not a direct effect, it's an indirect effect, but let's go with that too. So, it's a lot of observation. It's a lot of, what are you using exactly and what's the outcome, measuring it, biomarkers.
Well, the call memo sent in a super chat, you guys. He says, Meshulam identified and isolated THC first, but it was Adams from Illinois who first synthesized THC by modifying the structure of other cannabinoids.
That's not entirely true, okay? All right? And I appreciate the memo saying that. But the first people to isolate THC was Wood, Spivey, and Easterfield in 1896 when they did a vacuum distillation of cannabis charas that they brought back from India. Those people, it was difficult. I mean, okay, this is contemporary with the discovery of the light bulb. This is 20 years before the discovery of the electron. So in 1896, these Brits were the first people to ever make cannabis distillate. If you look at the boiling point of their distillate, it is spot on with Meshulam's boiling point, spot on with my own data. They were the first to isolate THC.
Wow.
And actually, Adams isolated THC. What Meshulam did, just to set the record straight, so everybody knows, what Meshulam did is he was the first to correctly elucidate the structure of delta-9 THC. What confounded researchers before that was they didn't have an analytical technique to fully understand the structure. In the early 60s, there was a new technique developed called NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. And Meshulam understood that there was a little bit of, uncertainty about what. See, the problem, Jason, is when they were isolating THC back in Adams's lab, it kept on isomerizing delta 9 over to delta 8. So they thought that delta 8 was the original configuration. If you look at Adams's papers, and I've read every one of them, every word of every paper. I've also read every Meshulam paper, in case anyone cares. But
we know.
I wouldn't expect any less.
Sure, what I can tell you for sure is that the first people to isolate THC on planet Earth was Wood, Spivey, and Easterfield in England, based on cannabis charas that they brought back from India. And what confounded researchers early on in the late 1800s and early 1900s was the fact that the compounds from the plant are what a chemist would call metastable, meaning that it's very easy to isomerize delta 9 into delta 8. And they just didn't have the sophisticated analytical instruments around the turn of the century to correctly elucidate that. Meshulam understood this, and with the advent of NMR in the early 60s, his isolation method and his NMR interpretation in his landmark paper in 1964 was the first time that the correct structure was elucidated as delta 9 THC. Before that, it was the other isomers, and again, other way that they identified products back in the Adams era of chemistry is they isolated natural products, and then they did chemical reactions to those natural products to make known derivatives, and then figured out the pieces of the puzzle by piecing it back together on understanding what chemistry they did. They used to make something called derivatives. And when you make a derivative that's a known crystalline derivative and you could purify it and get the melting point, you could understand what precursor molecule made that derivative. So in that process, they were isomerizing and really scrambling the natural configuration of delta 9. But Meshulam's most important contribution to cannabinoid science, not necessarily the correct structural elucidation, although that was a very important leap forward. He then asked, how do these things work in the body? And it was through his interactions with Roger Pertwee, my collaborator Alan Hallett at Wake Forest, and William Devane, that they isolated or determined what the CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors were, and also the natural ligands that our body makes, the endocannabinoids, anandamide and 3-HE. So for that, they should have certainly gotten the Nobel Prize in medicine, and who knows, maybe they will get a Nobel Prize someday for that.
Well, maybe
it's a tremendous contribution.
Maybe they will now when Kennedy takes over as the director of HHS. But also the Cole memo threw in another super chat and says, "We definitely care, Dr. Mark. Fascinating, and thank you."
Yeah, so I wrote an article for the American Journal of the Endocannabinoid Society or some shit like that. Go to my website. You'll see betterchemconsulting.com or .whatever, and there's a link to that article that talks about the early isolation of THC. And I do believe, just based on the boiling points being spot on, that they did not isolate cannabinol like they thought. They isolated tetrahydrocannabinol, and they were the first to do it.
Fascinating history report. We got to go to a commercial. We're going to be
That's your science lesson for today, folks.
Yes.
Are you a business that's suffering from the hyperinflation that is plaguing America today? We have the solution for you. That's right, Patriot Business Financing. Head on over to www.patriotbfc.com and apply for a loan up to $2 million. Any state, any industry, even the cannabis industry, the CBD industry, as well as the industrial hemp fiber industry. Secure up to $2 million today, and make sure that when you apply, you tell Paul you said hi from High at 9.
I like what you did there. Rico, you want to introduce Jenny Beth?
You gotta tell me this early so I can get my shit ready, but I'm just going to go.
I'm sorry. Matthew St. Germain had to drop, so I'm going to end up reading his story after this. But I figured.
But Rico doesn't call me America's sweetheart, but all right.
He will today. How about that?
I'm not touching that one, but y'all know who it is. Coming up next, it is the melanated, opinionated, and maybe even inebriated. I don't know. I'm not as well. No. Mouth from the South, Jason Beck's conservative thorn in his side.
No
not
thorns.
Afraid to call anybody out on their bullshit. Y'all know who it is. It is Jenny Beth Deals.
Okay, so, well, now that we have the election over with, we can take it back to issues that we can correct in the cannabis industry, right? So back on my social equity soapbox. In Illinois, not Illinois, Illinois, S is silent, a new lawsuit is making waves in the cannabis industry. A group of social equity cannabis transport companies is suing the state, claiming Governor J.B. Pritzker and the Department of Agriculture have failed to deliver on promises to support minority-owned businesses in the sector. The lawsuit, filed on November 1st in Sangamon, County, alleges that the 2020 policy change allowed existing medical marijuana companies to transport their own product instead of using independent transporters, as was originally outlined in the 2019 cannabis legalization law. The 7 social equity plaintiffs say this shift has been devastating. These smaller minority-owned businesses were supposed to benefit from a market designed to support those impacted by the war on drugs. But instead, the lawsuit claims their transport licenses are now virtually worthless. According to the plaintiffs, large medical operators like Green Thumb Industries, Cresco Labs, and PharmaCann are using their own transport services, leaving no room for independent transporters to compete. The change was made during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the state never reversed it. The lawsuit highlights how the Department of Agriculture quietly gave these medical cannabis companies quickie transport licenses in 2020. By the time the first social equity transport licenses were issued in August of 2021, these large companies already had significant head starts. The lawsuit states there was no practical reason for medical cannabis companies to use independent transporters, as they were already handling their own distribution. The numbers paint a bleak picture. Illinois issued 222 independent transport licenses through January 2023, including 55 to social equity companies, yet only 24 are currently operational, 22 of them being medical transporters. The plaintiffs argue there's simply no demand for other transport services in the current structure. Despite these struggles, Governor Pritzker has publicly celebrated the state's cannabis program as one of the most equitable and economically prosperous in the country. Yeah, right. However, the lawsuit claims this isn't the reality for social equity license holders. Only 2 of the 7 plaintiffs, Hands to Heart and Piff Patch, have secured any business contracts. The others are facing financial ruin, with one company predicting it will run out of funds in just 3 months' time. The suit calls for policy changes to level the playing field, suggesting that Illinois could require all cannabis companies to use third-party transporters, a policy recommended in a report by the Pritzker administration itself. The lawsuit also criticizes other barriers like lengthy wait times for employee licensing, bans on independent transporters storing cannabis between jobs, and stricter compliance requirements than those for larger companies. A spokesperson for the Department of Agriculture declined to comment, citing the pending litigation. However, this isn't the first time social equity businesses in Illinois have reported challenges. Earlier this year, several insiders raised concerns about the hurdles facing craft growers and other license types. As this legal battle unfolds, it shines a spotlight on the state social equity initiatives in the cannabis sector, questioning whether they are truly delivering on their promises. So this sounds very, very familiar to our own state, and Gavin Newsom quietly issuing the ability to stack licenses to his big MSO buddies while purporting to give social equity and the little guys a head start. I think this is shameful. I definitely feel for these companies, and I think, maybe that is a way to shut down on some things. If you have a third party doing your transport, you're probably less likely to divert product. You're probably less likely to do other things. But I think whether or not you agree with if a third party is required, this is what they suggested. This is what they put into law. And this is what they've now had these people spend their time and money on, knowing that they didn't have a chance in hell at this race. So I'm going to throw it back to you guys and see what you think. But I've always stand on the side of social equity.
Jason, quick question for you. If the Republicans, obviously the Republicans are most likely going to be legalizing on a big scale of things, do you think that they will just do away with social equity programming? It's a real question.
No, I do not. No. Why would they? That doesn't make sense. Why would they do away with it? Like make it all like go away like it never existed? If they do anything, they're going to improve it. If they do anything to it, they're going to improve it, and they're going to pull out a lot of the bullshit that goes on with it and streamline it.
Why was this bipartisan before we even discuss the struggles that are going on in your home state, Rico?
What's that? It was every single time I'm on here, I say social equity has been a failure pretty much everywhere.
I know, but we're talking specifically about, Illinois right now, what's happening with these third-party transport licenses and the fact that they silently issued licenses to 2 companies in 2020 and then screwed everybody else who they had going through this lengthy process.
What I'm saying is we get these reports all the time, like from every state. They say, the government has fucked up social equity yet again, right? So if the Republicans are going to be in charge on a federal level and it's about to be federally legalized, like how will that, do you have any? That's my question to Jason first, because you said that you were going to support social equity regardless. My question to Jason is, like, are the Republicans going to do anything different from a broad sense? Because I think the only way that social equity is going to work is from a top-down perspective on the federal level. Will there be anything done to social equity from a federal standpoint? Do you guys think?
Oh, I guess because it was a guided question, it seemed more like it was a baited question. But I understand what you're coming from.
It was from Rico. You know, it was bait.
I'm not baiting you at all. There's a lot of question marks here. If we have Republicans who have been 100% against that, they've been 100% against civil rights or anything even resembling civil rights. So
that's not true.
What is going to happen to social equity?
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
I think the alarming part of the story, once again, is we see another program who's not doing what they said they were going to do, and now these applicants are suing the state, which is what should be done.
Exactly.
So I'm
agree with
interested
that.
to see how the litigation unfolds, because it's clearly laid out in the law, right? And so the courts are going to follow the law, hopefully. So we'll see what happens here. I think it's interesting. I think it's bigger than Republican or Democrat, because who's in charge in Illinois?
Democrats.
Got it.
Well, my question is,
Democrats are in charge.
What I was saying is, you already answered where your stance is. I'm saying, with Jason, what do you think? Now the Republicans are in charge. How are they?
I just told you. I said Republicans are going to do it better, bro. That's what we do.
How?
I just
insight in that. Oh, they would handle it different. You said pull out all the bullshit. Like what? Like
really?
What would they do different?
They'd pull out. They would streamline it so to eliminate the predatory contracts, things like that, bro. That would be probably one of the biggest things. They probably would apply federal grant money for these businesses to get startup and incubation process. All of those types of things that new businesses need, especially when you're trying to promote a program to help alleviate the harms caused by the war on drugs, Rico. All the things that the Democrats should have done. How about that?
You're getting upset right now. Oh, I struck a chord.
You got what you wanted, Rico.
Yeah, you got what you wanted.
T, Dr. Mark, do y'all have any opinions on this?
Like how Republicans would handle this on a federal level, because I only see social equity ever working if it was on a federal level, because there's too many people, as we see from state to state. We see going on in Illinois right now, in Connecticut, like all these other places. They say, "Oh yeah, it's going to be the best program ever," and it just fails. Like,
well,
I'd like to see. Well, I'm looking forward to. I'm cautiously optimistic and looking forward to seeing what it looks like under a Republican guise.
I'm excited to see. Yeah, exactly. I agree with Anna Lewis in the chat. She says, Anna Lewis says, "Don't worry, Elon will fix it." That's right, Elon will fix it.
As
long as it benefits Elon, he'll fix it.
I don't know. Elon don't need to benefit. He's the richest man in the world.
Okay, so he just needs to go on vacation.
I mean, he's not going on vacation. He's going to go start working for the American people for 4 years, probably 12.
Why? He's the richest man in the world.
Well, the dogs finally caught the car, man. The dogs finally caught the car. I want to see what y'all gonna do with it.
I'm interested. Stop it. You're just trying to gaslight, bro. Just
I don't know any government that is not biased. I don't think it's something that's just Democrat or Republican. All governments have bias, and they're going to make some biased laws. They've got their buddies that are going to benefit from it, and people are going to get screwed.
Yep. People are going to get screwed. That's for sure. But hopefully these guys don't get screwed. But right now, meanwhile, Governor Pritzker is screwing these guys royally right now. So,
yeah, I mean, the fact that you guys are lagging on issuing permits and issuing licenses, but somehow you could quickly slip a couple out in 2020 to two people.
And if I seem to remember, I remember them, in the beginning of this whole social equity debacle in Illinois, that they were saying how they were going to have the most thorough program and the best for social equity applicants that any state, and they were going to be the model for the country and propping them up so much. And guess what? Another big epic
zero
fail.
Black people licenses.
Exactly. And on that, before we go down a rabbit hole, because we are pretty much way over time today, I'm going to go into Matthew St. Germain. He couldn't stick around. He had to go and get some work done today. But so in his story today, you guys, Massachusetts voters reject a proposal to legalize certain psychedelic drugs, you guys. In Boston, the Massachusetts voters rejected a proposal to legalize natural psychedelic drugs, according to a call by the Associated Press, representing a setback for what's been a growing legalization movement. The measure would have allowed people 21 and older to consume psychedelics like psilocybin mushrooms at licensed therapy centers, as well as grow small amounts at home. Oh, look at that. They got some home grow in there. The proposal came on the heels of successful campaigns to legalize and regulate psilocybin in Oregon and Colorado. And the New Approach PAC, a national advocacy group, poured millions of dollars into all three states' campaigns and will likely keep pushing similar proposals across the country, you guys. Opponents, including several large medical associations, argued that these drugs can be harmful, especially for people at risk for schizophrenia and psychosis. And they also feared the law would fuel a black market of homegrown psychedelics. Advocates point to a growing body of research that shows psychedelics' potential as a treatment for conditions like depression and PTSD. And that is pretty much it on that article. It was a super, super short one from today from Matthew St. Germain. What do y'all have to say about this?
I was really, really surprised with the lack of psilocybin or any of the proposals for psychedelics, like really doing work, man. I was surprised.
The problem is what worked in the past and what didn't work in the past. What worked in the past is when we medicalized cannabis, not when we put adult use, we can take whatever we want with cannabis. What's going to work with psychedelics is if you medicalize it first, you introduce it slowly, and then you bring in the legal. I haven't seen an adult use program that's working so far. So at this point, do what works, medicalize it. Is that what this law did? I don't think so. I think they went straight to adult use, right?
There is such a thing as too much too fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I agree with you completely. I think, and that is also part of my concern. Like, listen, I'm all for people having psychedelic plant medicine as well. But that's also my concern, especially with some of these holdout states looking through the Bible Belt and things like that. Like, yay to Kentucky, because everywhere that had it on the ballot, Kentucky approved it. But we're pushing these psychedelic initiatives so quickly and running straight to adult use with that it's giving all those people that's like, well, what's next? They're going to legalize heroin and cocaine and touching kids and everything else. You know what I mean? So you're kind of proving those NIMBYs right. Like, is there a tipping point where pushing psychedelics too hard and in the wrong fashion becomes a detriment to pushing through access to cannabis as well?
Mm-hmm. Very, very fair. Very fair points. I think you're right about that, Jenny Beth. I think it's very, very
similar
true. Slippery slope.
There are deep pockets that are now in this game. And I think with those deep pockets, it's going to be a, whack-a-mole, patchwork kind of, legislation from state to state. But, those things are available, man. You can get gummies. You can get all kinds of products that have mushrooms in them. I think this is...
You're totally right.
So there's basically a trap. Mushroom trap is going to win here, right?
You're right.
Like
I went into a bunch of head shops yesterday, and I was amazed at the amount of mushroom products that I saw on people's shelves, and it just amazes me that Governor Newsom is trying to ban hemp-derived products, which are federally legal, but yet he's not doing anything or saying anything about all these psilocybin products that aren't even have zero regulation and aren't even legal to sell.
Well, he's doing it because the regulated marijuana.
Say that again, Dr. T.
He's doing it because the regulated marijuana industry asked him to do it, right?
I don't think he's doing it for the regulated marijuana industry. He's doing it because he wants to try to corral the overall public into paying these over exorbitant taxes in California. But that's not going to be a reality.
Well, products, unlike cannabis, where California is basically sending product elsewhere, with hemp, products coming into California, right, from places like Florida and other places that are basically doing all that hemp processing. So I think part of that knee-jerk reaction to like ban all cannabis products was basically to keep stuff coming in from out of state into California.
Yep.
No, because you can still bring stuff. You can sell it in Nevada and mail it to Californians. Those companies are surviving with this ban. People who are producing it in California and selling it in California, they're the ones who are hurting.
Don't you think, Dr. T, with mushrooms, this will just be their next inning? This is just the next play. Is that eventually they're gonna go after them just like they went after the hemp stuff?
I don't know. Time will tell, and we will see, and we will be covering it all here on High at 9 News. That's for sure.
Yes, we will.
Don't Gavin Newsom own a couple of wineries?
Yep.
He also has ownership and cultivation in Mendocino on the watershed, but that ain't my business.
Hey, man, you might have psilocybin-infused wine coming there pretty soon. I don't know.
Rico's over here hoping and dreaming.
Exactly.
I'm right out
Maybe
of
he'll buy the Oreo factory and you could just cut a step out, Rico.
Right out of Gavin Newsom's wineries. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, boy.
That's why he's not talking about psilocybin. I don't know, Jason. What do you think?
Oh, boy. I think it's time to go, Rico. I think it's time to go.
Thank you all for joining us for the end of the episode of High at 9 News. You can catch us live weekdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to super fans getting their comments posted. Had a couple of come in through Cole Memo today, man.
3 from the Cole Memo. Big shout out to the Cole Memo, man. Much love. Thank you so much.
3P.
Yes.
3P. Just like his beloved Chicago Bulls with the 3P over there.
Yes.
And to everybody else as well that tuned in live with us today and tunes in every single day to watch us scream and shout over each other, just talking about cannabis legalization. That's what we do. To our vetted correspondent team tuning in from all over, bringing us much needed variety of perspective. Bit my fucking lip. Sorry about that. Bring us much needed variety of perspective and your opinions to the table as well. Our production team, Cloud Media Partners, Millie and Adam behind the scenes, always locking us, holding us down, keeping our AV struggles to a minimum. As always, Cannabis Sativa L, the reason why we show up to read these headlines every single day. Thank you too. It has been Friday, November 8th, 2024. The show's been over and you've all been blessed with the top industry headlines. Hope it's enough for you to put in your pipe and smoke at least until Monday. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for a High at 9 News, America's #1 daily cannabis news and opinion show. And today I want to pop things right back out to Dr. T. How about Dr. T, man? Break us off with a little Friday love. It's been a long week, my man. It's been a long week.
We're right on, Rico. Love is the operative word. This plant brings us together, doesn't pull us apart. So let's follow its lead and let us nurture our society and have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend,
Absolutely.
everybody. Yes.
We pull the plant apart to come together, right?